I moved here to study, and I'm embarrassed that this happened. After graduating from college, I was preparing for the secondary school teacher certification exam when I got involved with an older widow. I was born in New Jersey. This was my first time leaving New Jersey in my life, despite studying hard for the teacher certification exam at a tutoring center. I failed repeatedly. I had been studying diligently for 2 years, but still failed with good grades. I've wanted to be a teacher since I was young. I used to play teacher with my younger siblings, and I went to college without any trouble. However, the teacher certification exam was a high barrier. I decided to try one last time and moved to a quiet countryside village to forget city life and focus on my studies. The village was very small, with just over a dozen houses, but the community was welcoming. It was a place once featured as a remote area in our country, and the village was beautiful. I felt at peace living there, surrounded by low mountains, wide fields, and narrow roads. I rented an empty house through a friend of a friend. The house came with basic furnishings, and having helped my father with household chores since I was young, I could manage cooking for myself. The house had a small yard, 2 bedrooms, a kitchen, and a living room. I unpacked my things in the smaller room and used the larger room for studying. While I was adapting to living, studying, eating, and sleeping in this house, the person who introduced me to the house came by and mentioned that someone they knew was in a tough situation and needed to stay here, asking if it would be all right for them to use the large room, since I planned to use the house alone until just before the teacher certification exam, and it wouldn't interfere with my studies. I didn't mind someone else living there. Out of guilt, they offered to halve my rent. And since I had no financial leeway and had been relying on my parents for allowance, this offer was particularly tempting. I wouldn't have to pay for rent or food while studying at the academy, and I insisted on studying in a quiet place. This one last time, receiving support from my parents who weren't in a great financial situation themselves. The rent wasn't too expensive, but I planned to save up half of it for something I wanted later. But I never imagined she would bring so many children with her. I cleared out the large room and arranged the smaller room for studying. A few days later, some children came into the yard, followed by a small, pretty-looking woman. "I'm sorry, I have 5 kids," she said with a laugh. But it struck me as a moment of realization. She had her hands full. She mentioned that her youngest had just turned 2 when her husband passed away unexpectedly. She had no in-laws or parents of her own, having grown up in an orphanage, a place exclusively for girls at the time. She left with some independence money, worked, and eventually met her husband, who also grew up in an orphanage. Despite never knowing their parents, they wanted to be good parents themselves, which led to their large family. After her husband's sudden death, she discovered he had taken out loans in preparation to start a franchise business. Around the time they were expecting their youngest, they lived cozily in a small house, but had to leave due to the loans, ending up in a remote village. The children's eyes all sparkled with innocence. The mother was busy with the paperwork for moving and transferring schools, willing to do any job available in the village. She has 3 daughters and 2 sons, the older boys often finding joy in sleeping in my room. She apologized, yet seemed to find a moment to breathe. At night, I could hear her telling old stories to her daughters in the next room. It's astonishing how she's managed to never raise her voice at her children. in such dire circumstances, truly a remarkable mother. The boys excitedly talked about their dad, saying, "Our dad was the best, even better than others. He didn't go to college, but was smart up until high school. He would teach us kindly whenever we asked and helped with chores." The eldest son added, "If Dad were here, we could have started the store, paid off the loans, and gradually improved our situation. But now it's really tough," his mood quickly darkening. Despite the noise of 5 kids, which could sometimes be overwhelming, their family seemed powered by love, capable of overcoming any challenge. Then, one night, I heard her sighing in the next room. "Honey, why did you have to go first? How am I supposed to live? I'm barely getting by in this remote village we've never been to before." Her monologue, filled with sorrow, touched my heart. Living in a single room with 5 children must be incredibly challenging. Strangely, I found myself increasingly concerned about her. In the morning, she would send the 4th and youngest to daycare, working wherever she could find piecemeal work or at a nearby small factory to earn their daily wages. Raising a brood of kids, she had honed her cooking skills to perfection. She could whip up an array of dishes in no time. I used to skip breakfast, only eating lunch and dinner. But once she started preparing meals, I joined her at the table. We had plenty of side dishes sent from home and brought over by our kind neighbors, so cooking rice was all that was needed. However, she insisted on making fresh dishes for the kids. Having been used to cold leftovers, the warmth of her freshly prepared meals felt like a comforting layer of oil coating my stomach. Gradually, I began to comfortably accept her cooking and resolved to help her without complaint if the opportunity ever arose. One breezy autumn night, waking up to use the bathroom, I heard noises from the kitchen. There she was, drinking water from the fridge. "You're up. It's 2 a.m. You should be sleeping," she said. "I can't sleep. My life feels so pitiful, and I miss my late husband. But if I want to adapt and survive here, I have to take any job that comes my way," she sighed. Living together for a few months, she found comfort in my company. She always wanted to show a strong front to the kids and never complained. But that night she opened up about her struggles. Before moving here, she had faced numerous temptations from her husband's friends and colleagues, but with no parents or siblings and 5 kids to care for, she couldn't accept any offers, no matter how favorable. She then asked, "You seem like you'd make a great teacher. You're a genuinely good person. Do you have a girlfriend in New Jersey?" "I've put off dating until I pass my exams," I replied. I saw a mix of relief and something else in her expression. Becoming a widow in my mid-30s and still thinking about men. "I guess I'm not over it," she said, looking at me. And that night, in the living room, we became one. The fear of waking the kids was palpable. After accepting me, she even shed tears. And as time went on, we found more moments together when the kids were at school. One day, I rushed to work after a hasty morning and ended up nodding off at my desk. "What about me? But somehow I study better," I joked, looking at her. We spent a long time together in the living room after the kids fell into a deep sleep. Through this awkward cohabitation, I finally passed the teacher certification exam on my 3rd try. It was a bittersweet farewell when I returned to New Jersey, but we've kept in touch ever since. She seemed to have settled into life there, making the most of the benefits available to children from agricultural and fishing communities. I met my current wife at the school where I started working. She's a year younger than me, a beloved moral education teacher, known for her warm approach to the kids and immensely popular among them. I might be bragging, but I was even voted the most handsome teacher by the students. After 4 years of teaching, her kids have grown up. Two, her eldest is now in their senior year of high school. She married a wealthy bachelor from the area, known for his prosperous farming. He's a professional farmer, specializing in cultivating exotic crops for export. She sends me these special crops as a way of repaying the kindness I showed her and her family during their toughest times. I tell her to not worry about me and to live comfortably, but she says she can't forget how I generously offered them a large room and accepted them when they were in dire need. She wishes I'd think of her as an older sister. I laughed and said, "All right, sis. If your husband ever gives you trouble, just tell me. I'll be your brother and sort it out." I never imagined such events unfolding while studying in such a remote area, but I'm thankful everything turned out well in the end.